Hey there, sleepyheads. Welcome back to the channel. Before we drift into tonight's tale of the Lost Artifacts of Ooo, I'd love to know where in the world you're watching from tonight, and what time is it for you right now? Drop it in the comments below. It's always magical seeing how far and wide this sleepy little community reaches. All right, lights low, blankets up, let's begin. Tonight, we're wandering through the quiet ruins of Ooo, not to seek treasure, but to listen. The world of Adventure Time is a land stitched together from the fragments of an older Earth, and every corner of it hums softly with forgotten stories. Long before Finn and Jake ever set out on their cheerful adventures, before princesses ruled kingdoms made of candy or flame, there was a silence, the kind that only follows something enormous. The Mushroom War ended, and from its ashes, Ooo began to bloom. If you look closely, you can still see the bones of the old world beneath the grass, the rusted shapes half buried in the ground, the machines that still blink, though no one remembers their purpose, the quiet hum of power lines that stretch across a sky no longer owned by men. These are the whispering relics, the remains of a civilization that dreamed too hard and burned too bright. Sometimes when the wind moves just right, you can almost hear them, a faint electronic sigh, a melody trapped in an ancient cassette, a voice that doesn't know it's been alone for centuries. They say magic rules Ooo now, but maybe it's just what grew in the empty spaces where science once lived. Maybe the two were never enemies at all, only old friends who forgot each other's names. BMO, for instance, carries a secret older than most kingdoms. A little console who laughs and plays, who sings songs and dreams of friendship, yet inside, there are circuits from a forgotten age. When BMO speaks, it's like hearing a lullaby written before the world turned strange. No one built another like them. No one remembers how. And yet BMO smiles, unaware that they might be the last child of humankind's imagination, a toy built to keep someone company through the end of everything. In Ice King's palace, frozen deep within the northern tundra, there are other relics. Not just the crown, though that too hums with mystery, but simple objects caught in the ice. An old record player, a broken pair of glasses, a painting of a city that no longer exists. They're not valuable in the way of gold or jewels, but they hold something heavier, memory. Simon once walked among those things as a man long before his name was swallowed by madness. And even now, when he stares at them through frozen eyes, a small flicker of who he was seems to stir. The ruins of Ooo are not ruins of stone, they're ruins of meaning. Everything that once was built for a reason now sits beneath layers of time and magic. What was once a subway station might now be a cavern where fireflies glow like stars. A rusted satellite dish might have become a throne for an owl wizard. The shapes remain, but their purposes have long since been rewritten by nature and enchantment alike. As we travel further, imagine standing in the middle of a sunlit field, tall grass brushing your knees, the sky painted with the soft blues of evening. Beneath that grass lies the twisted skeleton of a car. To most creatures of Ooo, it's just another strange hunk of metal. But maybe if you placed your hand against its door, you'd feel the echo of old music, the memory of motion, the warmth of lives that once hurried along roads that no longer exist. Oo's magic didn't erase the past, it simply made it dream. Every piece of rubble became part of a new story. That's the beautiful tragedy of it all. This world was born not from creation, but from recovery. The world healed, but it didn't forget. It just covered the scars in flowers and candy and song. And so the relics whisper. They tell stories no one hears anymore of scientists who turn to dust, of machines that still wait for commands, of stars watched through cracked telescopes. There's something comforting in that. The idea that even in the strangest corners of Ooo, the past is still softly breathing, waiting for someone kind enough to listen. Tonight, that someone is us. Let's keep wandering. We walk now through a different part of Ooo, a place the maps never quite show. It's somewhere between forest and wasteland, where the grass grows through cracks of old pavement, and vines coil gently around the skeletons of towers. The air hums faintly, like an old television left on after the broadcast has ended. Here, relics sleep beneath the soil, and though they no longer move, they still remember how to be alive. If you listen carefully, you can almost hear the rhythm of what once was, the steady ticking of clocks buried in dust, the sigh of air conditioning from buildings long gone, the faint hum of electricity moving through roots instead of wires. Time in Ooo doesn't move forward the way it used to. It drifts, like a leaf in slow water, and within that gentle current, the artifacts of the past drift too, sometimes rising, sometimes sinking, never truly gone. There's something strangely peaceful about that. The world has learned to coexist with its ghosts. Even the people of Ooo, though most don't realize it, carry fragments of that forgotten era within them. Princess Bubblegum, with her scientific mind and love for creation, is a reflection of that human spark, the drive to build, to understand, to control chaos through invention. Her laboratory, filled with softly glowing flasks and beeping machines, is more than a Candy Kingdom's curiosity. It's a love letter to a world that once believed science could explain everything. Yet, like the relics buried outside her city, her experiments hum with a quiet sorrow. Because deep down, she knows what happens when creation forgets compassion. She remembers even if she doesn't know why. The Candy Kingdom itself is an artifact in disguise. Its streets are lined with cheerful citizens and pastel light. But beneath that sweetness lies an echo of a different dream, a society trying once again to rebuild. The cheerful voices, the gentle order, the colorful design of everything. It feels like humanity's attempt at innocence, born again after too much pain. Every candy person, every sparkling window, every bubblegum brick, they're pieces of that yearning. Beyond those bright walls, though, the wild relics remain. The deserts hum with the voices of lost technology. There are stories told of travelers who have found talking computers, still trying to run their last command, a robot that repeats the same phrase forever, its voice breaking down over centuries. A vending machine that still offers soda for coins that no longer exist. In Ooo, these aren't horrors, they're lullabies from another time. Little murmurs of a world that once believed in convenience, in progress, in the simple hum of power and purpose. Sometimes Finn and Jake stumble upon these things and laugh, unsure of what they're for. But every so often, Finn will pause, eyes soft, curious, as if some faraway memory stirs inside him. That's the wonder of Ooo. It's a world born from aftermath, yet it lives so vividly that even ruin feels alive. When we look at Oo's relics, we're not just seeing the past, we're seeing what happens when a world refuses to die. The war might have ended everything humanity knew, but life found a way to repurpose the debris. Machines became shrines, broken glass became windows for new creatures. Even the skies, scarred by fire long ago, became home to candy clouds and glowing rainbows. And maybe that's the quiet secret the relics are whispering. That destruction isn't the end. It's just a pause, a moment between breaths. The earth, patient and forgiving, took what humanity left behind and wove it into something soft again. You can almost imagine the planet dreaming during those long years of silence after the war, dreaming of color, of laughter, of shapes that defied logic but felt kind. When it woke, there was Ooo, a patchwork world stitched together from love and memory, and the artifacts were its stitches, holding it all in place. The old and new lives side by side here, never fighting, never truly separate. A sword forged from a satellite. A home built from a crashed rocket. A flower blooming through the eye socket of a robot. It's all part of the same strange heartbeat. And as we walk among these quiet wonders, the line between past and present begins to blur. Are we walking through ruins or through dreams? Maybe both. In Ooo, there is no real difference. Now, when night falls over Ooo, the relics seem to wake. The light changes, the warm gold of day softens into pale blue, and the edges of the world feel slower, almost deliberate. In the silence, you can hear the soft ticking of things that no longer have hands or gears, the sigh of wind through hollow metal. These sounds aren't meant to frighten. They're the world's slow breathing, the last rhythm of the age before. If you could walk through the meadows at this hour, you might see little flickers of light beneath the grass. Not fireflies, but something older, the glow of circuitry, still alive after centuries. The grass has claimed it, curling gently around the wires like fingers holding a forgotten toy. The land doesn't reject the relics, it cradles them. What humanity made has become part of nature's new song. There's a small hill near the western plains where travelers say a television stands alone. No one remembers how it got there, but on certain nights, its screen hums to life. The image is faint, a child's cartoon, or a newscaster reading headlines that have long lost meaning. The candy people say it's haunted, but others think it's something gentler. Perhaps it's a memory refusing to fade, a lonely echo that keeps playing because that's all it knows how to do. In Ooo, even the haunted things feel tender. There's no cruelty in their persistence, only longing, a wish to be remembered. Finn once found an old camera buried beneath the sand. He didn't know what it was, but when he pressed the button, it clicked, and out came a photo of a smiling family standing beside a house that no longer exists. He didn't understand who they were, but he kept the photo anyway, tucked in his pack beside his sword. Maybe he could feel it, that soft hum of emotion trapped inside the image. The relics might not speak our language anymore, but they still remember what it means to love, to lose, to want. There are stories, too, of places where relics have begun to merge with living beings. A wizard with a mechanical arm, grown not through science but through adaptation. A creature of moss whose chest hums faintly with the pulse of an ancient heart monitor. These are the children of the New Age beings born from the harmony of what was and what is. They remind us that Oo's beauty comes from the union of opposites, the metal and the magic, the ruin and the rebirth. And then there's the sky. If you've ever looked closely during the quiet hours before dawn, you might notice faint shapes drifting far above the clouds, the silhouettes of broken satellites, still orbiting, still tracing their endless circles around a planet that no longer remembers their names. Some nights they flash faintly, sending signals that no one answers. Maybe they're calling to each other, or maybe to the ghosts of their makers. It's a sad thought, but also a peaceful one. They've become part of Oo's constellations, our stars born from memory instead of fire. All across the land, little fragments like these rest half-hidden. A melted watch embedded in the bark of a tree. A metal bird that once flew on fuel now resting in a nest of leaves. A cracked screen reflecting the moonlight like water. They're everywhere, tiny pieces of the old world, now part of the rhythm of the new. There's something almost sacred about them. The way they lie quietly, unbothered, as if waiting for someone to notice that they still matter. And perhaps that's the magic of Ooo, not that it erased the past, but that it learned to live with it, to love it, even in its brokenness. When you think about it, the relics are like dreams that never ended. They were built to last, to serve, to function. And when the world changed, They simply stayed, waiting, watching, learning how to belong again. And over time, the world wrapped its arms around them, the way a mother holds a sleeping child. So much of adventure, time's quiet power, comes from these details, the silent reminders that everything beautiful in Ooo grew out of something lost. Every cheerful kingdom, every colorful creature, every absurd and wonderful bit of nonsense, it all rises from the ashes of the old world. It's why Ooo feels both alive and haunted, cheerful and melancholy, familiar and strange. And maybe that's why the relics whisper, because they're not just memories of destruction. They're evidence of survival, proof that even when everything ends, something remains humming softly in the dark, waiting for someone curious enough or kind enough to listen. If you close your eyes and imagine standing in that meadow again, the one where the grass hides the machines, you might feel it. The warmth of a sun that's seen 1,000 ages. The distant laughter of people who are gone but not forgotten. The faint hum beneath your feet, steady and patient. It's the heartbeat of Ooo itself, carried through the bones of what came before. And somewhere deep beneath that heartbeat, another sound joins it, the whisper of an artifact, breathing quietly, dreaming of the day it will be found again. Somewhere beyond the edge of the Candy Kingdom and the Iceland, there lies a valley covered in fog. Few travel there anymore. It's a still place, neither dangerous nor welcoming, just quiet. When the mist parts, the shapes beneath it glimmer faintly. Rusted towers lean toward each other like tired storytellers, their metal bones softened by moss. Broken signs sway gently in the wind, their words erased by time. And beneath the fog, hidden among the wildflowers, are hundreds of artifacts, relics of a forgotten century. No one built this valley. It simply gathered itself over time like a memory collecting dust. Every object here once belonged to someone, though their names are gone. A bicycle with vines wrapped around its wheels. A stack of vinyl records turned to stone by age. A small hand mirror reflecting the gray sky, still unbroken after 1,000 years. Each one seems to hum faintly, a vibration so soft you can only feel it if you're still enough. Together they form a strange sort of chorus, not of sound, but of presence. This is what makes Ooo so hauntingly beautiful. It's not just the new life that grew after the world ended. It's the way that life carries the memory of what came before. The grass grows over the rubble, but it never forgets that something once stood there. The rivers carve new paths, but their waters still pass through old cities buried deep below. The past and the present are tangled here, inseparable, like roots wrapped around bones. And sometimes the relics seem to speak through dreams. There are stories of wanderers who slept too close to the ruins and dreamed of another time, a city of lights, the hum of cars, the laughter of people who looked like them but wore strange clothes. They wake with tears in their eyes, though they can't say why. It's as if the objects themselves remember what it felt like to be loved, to be used, to have purpose. And in their quiet way, they share that feeling with those who pass by. Maybe that's what the magic of Ooo truly is, not something separate from the old world, but something that grew out of its grief. The war didn't create magic. It uncovered it. It allowed the forgotten things to breathe again. Maybe the relics were always waiting, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the world to slow down enough to hear them. Think of the way light falls through shattered glass, scattering into rainbows. That's what Ooo is, a rainbow made from broken things. Every artifact, every strange remnant, refracts a little bit of the past into the present. The world doesn't hide its history here. It wears it openly, like a patchwork quilt. And though the pieces don't all fit, Together they make something that feels alive, something that breathes and grows and dreams. In a strange way, the relics have become caretakers. They watch over the creatures of Ooo, offering quiet lessons in endurance. The rusted tower that still stands despite centuries of wind. The cracked screen that reflects a child's face with wonder. The music box that plays a single note over and over, refusing to fall silent. They are reminders that time can change everything except the will to continue. And when you think of it like that, maybe the relics are not whispers of loss at all. Maybe they're songs of hope. They remind us that what is broken can still be beautiful, that even the most shattered fragments can become part of something new. Sometimes late at night, when the air is still and the stars shimmer faintly above the land of Ooo, you can almost imagine those stars listening to the hum of machines beneath the earth, to the gentle sigh of old ghosts, to the world rebuilding itself again and again. It's a peaceful kind of eternity, one built not on perfection, but on persistence. So when we look at Ooo, we aren't just seeing a magical land of adventure and laughter. We're seeing a world that survived itself. Every candy brick, every sparkling pond, every gleaming sword and glowing gem, all of it, is built upon the bones of history. The relics remind us that memory is not something we lose, it's something we live through. It shapes the air, the earth, the quiet pulse of the stars. And maybe that's why the relics whisper when the night grows deep, because they know the truth that every ending is just another kind of beginning. The past doesn't vanish. It changes form, hides beneath new colors, takes on new names. Somewhere beneath the roots of a tree, a piece of metal hums softly, still alive. Somewhere deep in a frozen cave, a broken watch keeps time for no one. Somewhere in a quiet field, a child of candy and light hums a tune they never learned, a melody carried from a world that no longer exists. The relics don't need to be found to matter. They simply are sleeping beneath Oo's gentle surface, breathing with the rhythm of the land. And as the night settles around us, we realize that maybe we are relics to little echoes of forgotten dreams, carried forward by time, still shining softly into the dark. That is the whispering world beneath Ooo. A world where memory and magic are the same thing, and everything that once was, still is, just waiting to be heard. There's a certain stillness in the frozen north of Ooo, the kind that only exists where time itself seems to hesitate, afraid to move forward. The snow falls there in a rhythm that feels eternal, every flake descending like a memory choosing to rest. Beneath those endless curtains of white lies a lonely palace of ice vast, echoing and almost alive. Inside, among walls that hum with frozen light, sits a relic that shaped both a man and a world, Simon Petrikov's crown. It doesn't shine with warmth like the treasures of the Candy Kingdom, nor does it blaze with elemental fire like the jewels of Flame Princess's domain. No, the crown glows with a colder kind of brilliance, a quiet blue like moonlight on water. When you look at it, it seems to breathe, almost sighing as if aware of the sorrow it carries. For this crown isn't just an artifact of power. It is a wound carved into time, an echo of love and madness entwined so tightly that they can no longer be separated. Long before Ooo had candy people or vampire queens, before Finn ever picked up a sword, there was a scholar, a gentle, curious man named Simon Petrikov. He wasn't a warrior or a wizard. He was a historian, a man who loved to study the strange and the forgotten. One day, in some distant corner of the world that no longer exists, Simon found the crown. He didn't know it then, but what he had discovered wasn't just a relic, it was a soul. When Simon first placed it on his head, he felt a surge of something impossible to describe. Not warmth, not cold, but otherness. a voice that wasn't quite human, whispering inside his mind. The crown offered him visions, power, protection, endless knowledge. But behind that gift was a hunger, one that slowly began to unravel the man he once was. As the world crumbled around him, Simon used the crown's magic to survive, to shield those he loved, to endure the impossible cold left by the war's end. But every time he wore it, it took a little more of him away. His voice began to change, his thoughts tangled like frost-covered vines, until one day, there was no Simon Petrikov, left only the Ice King. Yet even in madness, the crown remembered the man it had broken. That's what makes it so haunting, because deep within its shimmering crystal, there's still a fragment of the love that created it, a spark of the man who once put it on for the right reasons. When we see the crown in the show, it's always there, silent, patient, heavy with meaning. It isn't merely a tool of control or magic. It feels alive. Sometimes when Ice King is quiet, the crown hums softly, as if soothing him. Other times it flares, its power trembling like a trapped heartbeat. There's a loneliness in that sound, a longing to be understood. If we think of Oo's relics as memories, then Simon's crown is the oldest and loudest of them all. It remembers the world before and after, remembers its creator, remembers the man who became its host, and perhaps, if we listen closely enough, we might hear it remembering love. The crown's origins trace back to a time even older than Simone, a time when the ice elemental reigned, when the forces of the world were bound by four great powers: fire, candy, slime, and ice. The crown is said to have been crafted to channel the essence of the ice elemental, to grant its wearer dominion over frost and snow. But power like that never comes without cost. The crown was made with purpose, yes, but also with desperation. Its enchantments were forged from love, twisted by grief, an attempt to preserve something that should have been allowed to fade. It's that grief that binds it to Simon. Perhaps it saw in him the same yearning, the same inability to let go of what was lost. Marceline, the little girl he protected through the ruins, became the tether between his fading humanity and his encroaching madness. The crown saved them both, but at the cost of Simon's mind. There's something quietly tragic about that balance, how an artifact meant to grant eternal control instead brought eternal sorrow. Simon wore it not for glory, but for protection, for love. And the crown, bound to that act, carries his pain like a song caught in ice. Even now, when the Ice King hums strange little tunes to himself, you can hear the echo of Simon beneath his words, a trace of kindness still trapped inside the cold. When we think about Simon's crown, it's easy to see it as a curse, a cruel object that stole his mind and trapped him in madness. But what if it wasn't truly evil? What if it was simply lonely? There's a theory whispered among lore enthusiasts in the deeper corners of Oo's forgotten archives that the crown doesn't just bond with its wearer, it reflects them. It becomes a mirror of their truest emotion. For Simon, that emotion was love, a desperate, unyielding love for Marceline and for a world slipping away. The tragedy, then, isn't that the crown destroyed him, but that it loved him back in the only way it knew how, by keeping him alive, no matter the cost. Imagine the world as Simon saw it in those final days before his transformation fully consumed him. The sky turned ash-gray, cities silent, the warmth of humanity fading with every breath. In that silence, the crown's voice would whisper again, calm, soothing, persuasive. It would promise safety, control, survival, and Simon, heart-heavy with grief, would listen. Each time he wore it, the cold crept a little further, not just into his skin, but into his memories. He began to forget faces, laughter, the simple feeling of warmth. Yet deep within the frost, the crown preserved one thing perfectly: his intent. It remembered why he did it. That's why, even in his wildest moments as the Ice King, he still sought companionship, still wanted to give gifts, to sing, to be loved. Because beneath all the layers of magic and madness, Simon's heart continued beating inside that icy shell faintly, stubbornly, endlessly. There's an almost poetic symmetry in how the crown behaves. It responds to emotion more than logic, almost as though it feels. When Simon's sorrow deepened, the storms grew harsher. When he felt calm, the snow would fall softly, gently, like feathers. Some even say the crown shaped the Ice Kingdom itself, not as a fortress, but as a reflection of Simon's mind. Cold, glittering, full of echoes. Think about that. Every icicle hanging from those ceilings, every glittering wall of blue could be a memory suspended in time. A frozen thought, captured by the artifact that both protected and imprisoned him. Perhaps the palace was never truly a home, but a map, each corridor a pathway through what remained of Simon's fractured consciousness. And somewhere in that maze of shimmering ice, the crown rests always close, never far. It hums faintly, sometimes glowing brighter when Simon draws near, as though it recognizes him, as though it remembers. Even after Gulb's chaos, when Simon was finally freed from its curse, the crown remained, quiet, still, waiting. That's the haunting part, how something once so powerful can suddenly fall silent, like a song that has ended, but still lingers in the air. It no longer calls to him, but it doesn't fade either. It exists as both history and heartbeat. There's a scene some fans overlook when Simon, restored to his human form, visits the crown again. He doesn't touch it. He just stands there, eyes heavy, breath misting in the cold. In that moment, you can almost feel the weight of everything they've shared. He isn't angry at it. He isn't afraid. He's simply sad. 'Cause how do you mourn something that both saved you and destroyed you? It's easy to see the crown as an antagonist, a source of corruption, a curse born from dark magic. But maybe it's more tragic than that. Maybe it's a relic designed to hold love forever, but unable to distinguish between saving and consuming. A creation meant to preserve, that instead petrified everything it touched. Simon's story reminds us that artifacts in Ooo are rarely just objects. They are vessels of emotion, memory, consequence. They carry whispers of the ones who held them, shaped by intent and pain alike. And in this way, the crown is more than a tool. It's a relationship, a bond between man and magic that went horribly right and horribly wrong at the same time. When you think of it like that, the crown stops being a villain. It becomes something far more human, a reminder that even the purest intentions can harden into tragedy when they're held onto too tightly. And if we listen closely to the quiet between the snowflakes in those hushed pauses that fill the Ice King's lonely halls, we might still hear the crown breathing. A faint pulse, almost imperceptible, like a sleeping creature beneath the ice. Some scholars of Ooo say that magic never truly dies, it only slumbers, waiting for the right heart to call it awake again. If that's true, then perhaps the crown isn't done with its story yet. It's merely resting, dreaming the same dreams Simon once did. In ancient texts scattered across the land of Ooo, half-burnt pages from pre-war vaults and half-remembered incantations, there are mentions of 3 jewels embedded in the crown: the red, the green, and the blue, each one humming with a different kind of power. Some theorists claim they represent the 3 primal forces of Ooo: life, memory, and ice. Others whisper that they're the remnants of celestial beings, fragments of stars that fell long before the Mushroom War. The blue gem, in particular, is said to be the heart of the crown, the one that speaks. When Simon first placed it upon his head, it wasn't simply a piece of enchanted jewelry he was wearing. It was a communication, a merging of minds. The voice he heard, the one that whispered comfort and command, wasn't madness. It was memory, ancient and foreign. Imagine for a moment what it would feel like to carry centuries of consciousness, to host the echoes of a being that once ruled frost and silence. The voice inside the crown might have been a king itself once, or perhaps a guardian of winter, a spirit that longed to continue its purpose after the world forgot its name. So it reached out. It sought a vessel. And Simon, lost and desperate in a dying world, was the first to listen. Even now there are faint traces of this shared soul lingering. When the crown is near, the air grows colder, not because of science, but because of memory, because it remembers what it was meant to do. In some ways, the artifact has more consistency than its creator. It never wavers from its design, to protect, to preserve, to endure. There's something hauntingly beautiful about that, how a piece of cursed magic can embody devotion more perfectly than a human heart ever could. Yet devotion without mercy becomes obsession, and preservation without warmth becomes prison. The crown could not understand the fragility of emotion, so it immortalized everything it touched in the only language it knew: ice. Many fans theorize that the crown's creator, the enigmatic being known as Gunther, or perhaps the ancient being that became Gunther, designed it not as a weapon, but as an act of longing. The crown was their way of leaving a piece of themselves in the world, a means of ensuring they were never truly forgotten. But like so many relics of power in Ooo, its purpose was misunderstood, its compassion twisted into control. Simon's tragedy lies in that misunderstanding. He wasn't chosen by the crown, he answered it. And once he did, the two became inseparable. The storm and the scholar, the mind and the magic, each feeding into the other until the lines blurred completely. If you look closely at the way the crown reacts throughout Adventure Time, you can see subtle hints of this dual nature. When someone unworthy tries to wear it, it rejects them violently, freezing them solid or sending them into madness. But with Simon, it did something different. It adapted. It learned him. It reshaped itself around his sorrow, cradling him in the cold like a parent who didn't know any other way to love. Even when he was freed, you can sense that connection isn't gone. In the later parts of his story, Simon often dreams of snow, of faint voices calling to him from the blizzard, not with malice but with yearning. Perhaps the crown dreams, too, dreaming of its lost wielder, of the warmth it never understood, of a human heart it once mistook for home. And maybe that's what makes this relic one of the most tragic artifacts in all of Ooo, because beneath the myths, beneath the layers of frost and history, it isn't really about power at all. It's about loneliness, the kind that freezes you from the inside out, the kind that turns even love into something eternal and cold. As we drift through this part of the story, let that thought settle softly in your mind. Not every curse begins with cruelty. Sometimes it begins with care that forgot how to melt. And so in that frozen bond between Simon and the crown, we see something more intimate than just a story of corruption. We see devotion, pure, unrelenting, and impossible to break. The kind that endures even when everything else has been stripped away. It's the devotion of a man to a child he promised to protect, and the devotion of a crown that could not bear to let him fade. There's a moment late in Simon's tale when he looks out over the endless white expanse, a man reborn, yet still haunted by echoes of the ice. You can almost imagine the wind whispering to him in that same familiar voice. "You're safe now, Simon. You can rest." It isn't real, but it feels real enough to make him pause. The kind of pause that comes when the past brushes gently against the present, reminding him that even freedom can feel lonely when it comes at such a cost. If you think about it, The crown was never entirely destroyed. Not truly. It endures because it's more than metal and jewels. It's a memory, an idea. It's every snowflake that still falls across Ooo, every frozen lake that gleams beneath the moonlight. It's the sound of Simon's laughter echoing faintly in the Ice Kingdom's halls long after he's gone. The artifact may rest, but its essence still moves quietly through the world, shaping frost and silence wherever longing takes hold. And yet, there's a quiet mercy in that persistence. Because maybe in some strange way, the crown has learned. Maybe, having tasted human sorrow, it finally understands the fragility of the warmth it once tried to preserve. The storms it creates now seem gentler, no longer angry, but wistful, as if the magic itself is learning to grieve. In the future of Ooo, as generations pass and stories fade into legend, the crown might one day awaken again. But this time, perhaps it will choose differently. Maybe it will no longer seek a host to protect or consume, but instead serve as a guide, a reminder of what happens when love and fear intertwine too tightly. And when that day comes, whoever finds it might feel a tremor in their chest, not of terror, but of recognition. Because even after all these years, Simon's spirit still lingers in the crown's core. His humanity, his compassion, left a mark the magic could never erase. In that sense, the artifact isn't a curse anymore. It's a memorial, a quiet monument to the man who proved that love could outlast even madness. The Ice King's story has always been about transformation, not just of form, but of meaning. What began as tragedy became lesson. What began as loss became legend. The crown embodies that perfectly. Once an instrument of despair, it now stands as a symbol of endurance, of how even the coldest things can carry traces of warmth. If you wander through the Ice Kingdom in the years after Simon's story, you might find small signs of that legacy. The air still hums faintly, as though charged with memory. Sometimes, when the aurora drapes across the sky, shapes flicker within the light outlines of faces, moments caught between shimmer and snow. Some say those are the memories the crown released, finally freed from their frozen prison. Each one a sigh of peace, a quiet farewell to the life they once knew. And yet, somewhere in the depths, beyond the ruins of ice towers and silent caverns, the crown remains, waiting, not with hunger, but with patience. Like a relic that finally understands that time, not power, is what truly endures. Maybe that's why Simon could never bring himself to destroy it. Deep down, he must have known that to erase the crown would be to erase the proof that he had loved, that he had fought for something worth losing himself for. The artifact wasn't just a mistake to him. It was a record of devotion preserved in frost. And so it sits, gleaming softly in the half-light, surrounded by echoes and snow, not as a weapon, not as a warning, but as a story frozen in crystal, one of countless tales that make up the quiet relics of Ooo. The heart of the storm, it turns out, was never the ice at all. It was Simon, a man whose love burned so fiercely that even the coldest magic could not extinguish it. As the snow settles once more, we leave this artifact where it belongs and as a symbol of pain, but as a reminder that sometimes even the most tragic things are born from the purest kind of care. And somewhere deep within the silence, the crown still hums, softly, steadily, remembering. Seg 3, we're going to peek behind the soft pink curtains of the Candy Kingdom, past the smiling faces and the sugar-dusted streets, to a quiet little corner most citizens never see. A place lit by candlelight and scented faintly of caramel and sulfur. This is the hidden world of Peppermint Butler, the kingdom's most polite, most mysterious servant. And behind his tidy bow tie and ever-courteous tone, there lies something ancient, something arcane. This is the dark cabinet, of Peppermint Butler. At first glance, you wouldn't think he's anything more than a loyal attendant to Princess Bubblegum, a perfect model of sweetness and etiquette. He speaks softly, serves tea, and always knows exactly where the princess's favorite tools are kept. But that's just the surface. Beneath that peppermint shell beats a heart steeped in secrets older than most kingdoms in Ooo. The Candy Kingdom, after all, is built on science, on structure, logic, and chemistry, Princess Bubblegum's order. But Peppermint Butler's world exists beneath that surface, in the places where science meets the supernatural. While Bubblegum studies molecules, he communes with spirits. While she builds machines, he conjures whispers from shadows. In the deepest corner of the royal castle, hidden beneath layers of candy brick and charm wards, is a room that few have ever seen. Some call it his cabinet, others his study. And though its door looks ordinary, just another peppermint patterned panel along the hallway, it hums faintly when you walk past it. The air turns cool, and you can almost feel the magic pressing from within, like a sigh from another world. Inside, the shelves are lined with artifacts that defy explanation. Tiny vials of glowing sugar dust that never melt, a cracked hourglass that counts backward, and books bound in licorice leather whose pages whisper when touched. In one corner, a small altar flickers with blue flame, not bright but steady. Around it, the air smells faintly of cinnamon and ozone. Peppermint Butler doesn't hide these things out of shame. He hides them because he must. Princess Bubblegum knows of his practices. Of course, she's too clever not to. But she tolerates them the way one might tolerate a strange superstition. Perhaps because deep down, even she understands that the Candy Kingdom's safety depends on more than science alone. There are things in Ooo that cannot be explained by formulas or reason, and Peppermint Butler has made it his duty to understand them. He wasn't always this way. There are stories, whispered among the older candies, that Peppermint Butler was once merely an apprentice curious, wide-eyed, dabbling in small spells to amuse himself. But something changed. Some say he gazed too long into the nightosphere. Others think he struck a deal with a power that looked kindly on his ambition. Whatever happened, it left a mark. His smile stayed, but behind it his eyes began to gleam with the knowledge of things better left unseen. If you think back to his appearances throughout Adventure Time, there are small clues, tiny gestures that betray his other life. The way he greets death by name, casually, as though they've shared tea before. The way he speaks of demons with the ease of a scholar recalling old friends. Once he even summoned the Lord of Evil himself, Hunson Abadir, without hesitation or fear. For a peppermint candy, that's no small feat. And then there are his collection's artifacts and trinkets gathered from corners of Ooo most creatures wouldn't dare to tread. Bottles containing whispers, charms etched with symbols that seem to shift when you look too long, a ring that never stops spinning. Each one has a story, though few know them. Each one hums with the quiet promise of danger and discovery. What drives him to collect these things? It isn't greed, nor is it power exactly. Peppermint Butler seems motivated by something deeper, a hunger for balance, for understanding. He knows, perhaps better than anyone, that Ooo teeters constantly between wonder and chaos, candy and decay, light and shadow, and someone must stand quietly in that in-between, keeping the scales from tipping too far. So he watches, studies, learns. While the rest of the kingdom sleeps soundly under Bubblegum's protection, Peppermint Butler listens to the whispers that creep through the cracks of the world. The ones that speak of forgotten spells and restless spirits. He doesn't fight them, not yet. He simply takes note, storing their secrets carefully away in his cabinet of strange and silent things. There's something almost comforting about that idea that beneath the cheerful perfection of the Candy Kingdom, someone is tending to the shadows, making sure that what lurks beneath stays where it belongs. But the deeper you look into Peppermint Butler's strange collection, the more it feels like stepping into a story that's quietly rewriting itself with every breath. Each item in his cabinet hums with its own quiet intent, like an orchestra of forgotten things waiting for their turn to be remembered. Some of these artifacts have names, others refuse them. Some glow faintly with color, while others seem to swallow light entirely. Together they form a strange harmony, a symphony of the unseen. One of the more peculiar objects, tucked away on a high shelf, is said to be a shard of enchanted toffee, old and brittle, yet still warm to the touch. It's rumored to have come from the candy elemental herself, the ancient being whose essence eventually gave rise to Princess Bubblegum. To most, it's nothing but hardened sugar, but to Peppermint Butler, it's a relic of the first sweetness, the pure source of all candy life. Sometimes, when the moonlight filters into the room just right, the shard hums softly, as though remembering its maker. Another shelf holds what appears to be a simple tea set. Porcelain, hand-painted, its cups glinting with gold trim. But if you pour tea into them, any tea at all, it turns black as ink. When sipped, the drinker claims to see visions, places they've never been, people they've never met, or sometimes just a single blinking eye watching from the dark. Peppermint Butler rarely uses it himself, but he keeps it polished and ready. Perhaps it's a way of staying humble, a reminder of how thin the veil between knowledge and madness can be. In the center of the room, under a glass dome, rests something far older, a mask carved from what looks like sugar crystal, though its edges glint like bone. No one knows where he found it. Some say it came from a buried temple far beyond the borders of Ooo, a place lost beneath sand and salt, where even spirits are afraid to whisper. When Peppermint Butler studies it, he does so quietly, his tone shifting from curiosity to reverence. He speaks to it softly, as if to an old friend. And sometimes, when the candles flicker, it almost seems to answer back. This is what makes Peppermint Butler so fascinating. He treats magic not as something to wield, but as something to converse with. He listens, he bargains, he learns. There's a grace in the way he moves through the shadows, never rushing, never forcing. He doesn't see dark magic as evil, only as misunderstood. Like a wild animal that can bite or bow, depending on how gently you approach it. And yet there's always an unease that lingers when you think of him. Not because he's cruel, but because he's calm about the things that terrify others. He doesn't flinch at demons, doesn't fear ghosts, doesn't shy away from the mention of curses. When most candies would melt in panic, Peppermint Butler simply straightens his bow tie and greets the darkness like an old acquaintance. Perhaps this calmness comes from experience. Or perhaps it's something deeper, a connection to a lineage older than the Candy Kingdom itself. There's a theory, whispered by those who've studied Oo's stranger histories, that Peppermint Butler has lived many lives. That every few centuries, when the old world begins to decay, he's reborn again into the next, carrying his memories like a faint taste on the tongue. He always takes the same form, polite, precise, unassuming, but within that sweet shell burns the memory of 1,000 secret nights. If that's true, then his cabinet isn't just a collection. It's a memory palace, a way to hold on to pieces of himself, his past lives, his lessons, his bargains. Each item a bookmark in the long, winding history of a soul that refuses to rest. And perhaps that's why Princess Bubblegum trusts him. Despite his strangeness, she knows, even if she'll never say it aloud, that Peppermint Butler walks the border she cannot see. He deals with the kind of knowledge that has teeth. He gathers the things too dangerous to destroy and too tempting to ignore. And in his own quiet way, he protects her not with science, but with shadow. In the grand balance of Ooo, the Candy Kingdom glows bright and warm. But every light casts a shadow, and Peppermint Butler, ever loyal, has made himself the keeper of that shadow, smiling, polite, and quietly watching the darkness so no one else has to. Sometimes, late at night, when the rest of the Candy Kingdom sleeps, and the glow of Bubblegum's laboratories fades into stillness, Peppermint Butler's footsteps echo down the marble halls. He walks softly, as though not to wake the castle itself. In his hand, a candle burns with an eerie blue flame, steady, silent, unmelting. He moves toward his cabinet, unlocking it with a whispered word rather than a key. The air shifts the moment the door opens. It's cooler, heavier, yet somehow alive. Inside, the relics seem to stir as though they recognize him. The cracked hourglass ticks backward once. The mask's hollow eyes glint faintly. A quill, made from the feather of a raven, dips itself into ink, ready for him to write. This is where Peppermint Butler feels most like himself, not a servant, not a subject, but a scholar of the unseen. On his work table lies a large, tattered tome. The pages shimmer faintly as if breathing. It's written in a language that no candy being should know, full of spirals, sigils, and letters that refuse to stay still. The book, some say, came from the Library of Night, a place where shadows record the histories the light has chosen to forget. And every so often, when the moonlight catches the pages just right, one can see the faint impression of fingerprints, not his own traces of beings who once sought its secrets long ago. Tonight, Peppermint Butler isn't seeking power. He's seeking clarity. He leans close to the book, eyes reflecting its flickering glow, and asks softly about a disturbance he's felt in the flow of magic, something unbalanced, a pull toward the dark that hums louder each passing year. The book rustles in reply, not with words, but with a slow, steady rhythm, like the heartbeat of the world itself. He listens, nods once, then closes it gently. To most, this scene might seem eerie, even ominous, but in truth, it's almost peaceful. Peppermint Butler doesn't fear the unknown. To him, magic, even dark magic, is part of Oo's natural order. The world has always balanced itself through cycles of chaos and calm, decay and creation. His task, as he sees it, is to keep those cycles from breaking, to be the quiet hand that nudges the scales back into place when they begin to tip too far. There are signs, however, that his work is wearing on him. If you look closely in certain episodes, there's a tiredness in his eyes that wasn't always there. A faint crack along the edge of his candy shell, like a stress line formed from centuries of keeping secrets. Even the sweetest things, it seems, can crumble under too much weight. Some fans believe Peppermint Butler's affinity for the dark arts isn't just fascination, it's necessity. That he's constantly negotiating with the unseen forces of Ooo to protect the kingdom from their influence. That every charm in his cabinet, every rune drawn beneath his gloves, is part of a delicate web of agreements, holding the world in balance. And if even one of those agreements were broken, the Candy Kingdom's sugary perfection might melt into chaos overnight. He never speaks of these burdens. He smiles, pours tea, and pretends nothing is amiss. Yet when Princess Bubblegum calls on him in times of danger, he always knows what to do. His responses are too quick, too precise, as though he's already prepared, as though he's seen the outcome before it happens. Maybe that's his magic, too, not just sorcery, but foresight earned through centuries of repetition. Every now and then he disappears for a day or two. The other candies whisper nervously, pretending not to notice. When he returns, his gloves are dusted with ash, and his bow tie smells faintly of brimstone. But he smiles, bows, and resumes his duties as if nothing at all has happened. No one asks where he goes. No one dares. Perhaps they understand, in their own sweet way, that some mysteries are better left unwrapped. And yet behind that polite facade there's a quiet melancholy. Peppermint Butler's knowledge isolates him. He walks among his fellow candies, but he doesn't quite belong. He knows too much of death, too much of the shadows that stir beneath the sugar-coated world. Sometimes, while serving at the royal banquets, his gaze drifts far away toward the horizon, beyond the Candy Kingdom, where darker lands breathe and whisper. Maybe he misses that world, or maybe he fears it's coming closer. There's an unspoken truth in Ooo. Those who guard against darkness are often shaped by it. And Peppermint Butler, for all his sweetness, carries a fragment of that shadow inside him. It doesn't consume him, but it defines him, like a drop of ink in a glass of water, small but impossible to remove. And yet he doesn't regret it. When the night grows still and the candles burn low, he sometimes hums a quiet tune while tending to his artifacts, something ancient and soothing, almost like a lullaby. Perhaps it's a song from before the war, or perhaps it's a charm, meant to keep the things in his cabinet calm. Either way, the air always feels softer afterward, as if the darkness itself is listening and smiling. When the last candle burns down to a blue ember and the moonlight begins to fade from the castle walls, Peppermint Butler prepares for his nightly ritual, the one no one ever sees. He sets aside his teacup, straightens his bow tie, and kneels before the dark cabinet. For a moment, he's completely still. The world outside continues. The Candy Kingdom sleeps. The air hums with sweetness, but in this chamber, time slows to a crawl. He whispers a name. Not a prayer, not a plea, but something older, a sound that vibrates through the air like a low chime. The cabinet answers. Its shelves tremble, and faint, smoky figures begin to take shape in the air outlines of beings not entirely present. Shadows of knowledge too vast to hold. They drift around him, drawn to the sound of his voice. And though their shapes are strange, their tone is reverent. They recognize him. You see, Peppermint Butler isn't just a student of the dark arts. He's a bridge between realms. Long ago, when the world was still thawing from the Great Mushroom War, he made a pact, not one of power, but of preservation. He promised to keep the balance between the sweetness of life and the bitterness of death. It's a promise he's kept for centuries, though the cost has been quiet and immense. Every spell he performs, every artifact he guards, takes a piece of him, slowly, gently, like a candle melting from within. One of the spirits lingers near him now, a flickering outline with many eyes. It speaks in a tone only he can hear. There's a warning in its words, something about a shift in the world's flow of magic. The crown, it murmurs, and the chaos that still hums beneath its frozen power. Peppermint Butler listens carefully. His brow furrows. For him, the crown has always been an obsession wrapped in caution, a relic tied to the deepest mysteries of Ooo. He's seen its energy ripple through time, through souls, even through dreams. He knows what Simon's crown represents, not just madness or magic, but a tether, a connection between human sorrow and cosmic will. It's an anchor, and anchors can drag worlds down if left unchecked. So, as he closes the cabinet, Peppermint Butler makes a note in his journal. Just a single line, written in glowing ink. The heart of the storm stirs again. Then, with a flick of his hand, the words fade into the paper, leaving no trace behind. Outside his chamber, the corridors of the Candy Kingdom begin to brighten with morning light. A new day dawns, and the world forgets how close it came, once again, to tipping into shadow. Peppermint Butler walks the halls like any loyal servant. carrying trays of breakfast, bowing to princesses and guests. No one suspects the night's work, the communion, the warnings, the weight he's still carrying. But occasionally, when bubblegum catches his eye, something passes between them. An understanding, perhaps. She is not ignorant of his dealings. She simply chooses not to confront them. They both know that Ooo needs balance, and balance sometimes comes from strange places. Science and sorcery, logic and lore. The Candy Kingdom thrives on both, and Peppermint Butler, for all his secrets, is part of that fragile equation. Later that evening, he returns to his cabinet once more, candle in hand. But this time, before opening it, he hesitates. He studies his reflection in the glass, small, round, deceptively harmless. Yet behind those polite eyes lies a depth of knowledge that could crumble empires. He sighs, sets the candle down, and smiles faintly. Just a peppermint, he murmurs to himself, as if trying to believe it. And maybe that's what makes him so hauntingly fascinating. He isn't evil, he isn't even entirely good. He's something in between, a reminder that wisdom often lives in the gray. In a world of colorful kingdoms and simple morals, Peppermint Butler stands as a quiet contradiction. A candy who has seen the void and chosen to keep smiling anyway. If you look closely, you might notice tiny details that speak of his dual nature, the way his shadow sometimes moves a second slower than his body, or how reflections of him occasionally blink when he doesn't. These aren't tricks of the animation. They're winks to the audience, gentle reminders that even in a show as whimsical as Adventure Time, the sweetest characters can hold the darkest truths. And maybe that's the beauty of it. Ooo was never just a world of heroes and villains. It was a realm of balances. Peppermint Butler represents the understanding that knowledge, even forbidden knowledge, isn't evil by nature. It's how you use it. His cabinet may be filled with cursed relics and dangerous tools, but in his careful hands they remain contained, guarded, studied, not unleashed. As the night grows older once more, he closes the door to the cabinet, locking it with that same whispered spell. The blue candle flickers out, leaving only silence. For a long while he stands there in the dark, feeling the hum of the artifacts through the walls. Then softly, he hums that lullaby again, the same one that calms the shadows, the same one that reminds the darkness it's being watched over. And as the final note fades, the cabinet stills, the air lightens, the balance holds, for now. But the glint in Peppermint Butler's eye suggests he knows balance never lasts forever. You might think of the world of Adventure Time as a place alive with color and motion, where every story centers around its heroes and villains. But if you look closely, beyond the sparkle of the Candy Kingdom or the frost of the Ice Mountains, you'll find something else, the quiet watchers of the world, the forgotten objects, the lingering symbols, the little things tucked into corners of frames that most never notice. These are the treasures that don't speak, yet they tell their own stories, patiently waiting for someone to see them. From the very first episode, the background of Adventure Time has been a museum of secrets, hidden relics from the old human world, toys half buried in moss, shattered screens flickering with static ghosts. Each one feels like a fragment of a lost memory, caught in a world that moved on without it. And perhaps that's what makes them so haunting. They remind us that Ooo was built atop the bones of something older, something that once looked a lot like our own world. If you pause during certain episodes, you can see these echoes tucked away in the scenery. In Finn and Jake's treehouse, behind stacks of dishes and adventure gear, lies an old, rusted video game console. Its lights are long dead, its cords tangled in dust, but it sits there quietly, as though remembering the laughter of children long gone. Maybe it was once a toy from the pre-war world, a relic of the Mushroom War's forgotten age. It's strange, isn't it? How a single object can hold the weight of centuries, a bridge between joy and ruin. There's another moment, gentle and fleeting, when we glimpse a broken television lying in the grass of the meadowlands. Its screen flickers just once, a heartbeat of static, before going dark again. The world of Ooo has no use for such machines anymore, and yet they remain scattered like fossils, testaments to the age when humans built things to feel less alone. Now, in the age of magic and candy, these artifacts rest silently under vines and sunlight, as if content to sleep. And then there are the treasures of strange origin objects that don't quite belong anywhere. A golden pocket watch frozen at midnight, a cracked helmet covered in writing no one can read, a single red shoe half buried in sand near the ruins of the Candy Kingdom's outskirts. Each of these little mysteries feels alive in its own small way, perhaps enchanted, perhaps cursed, or maybe just waiting for someone to remember them. One of the most overlooked treasures appears deep in the dungeons of Ooo, where the walls are lined with forgotten equipment armor, books, and relics from countless adventurers. Some of these dungeons were built by ancient beings, while others simply formed over time, shaped by magic gone wild. Yet among the gold and gemstones, you'll often find mundane things: a flashlight, a human chair, an empty mug. Each of them tells a story that's bigger than it looks. Someone sat there once. Someone built it, used it, lost it. The show never tells us who, and it doesn't have to. The silence is what makes it powerful. It's easy to think of these background treasures as just art choices, details for the animators to fill the world. But Adventure Time has always been more deliberate than that. Its world breathes, and its objects are like memories. They carry emotion, tone, history. A cracked mirror behind the Ice King's throne might reflect more than ice. It might reflect the human soul trapped beneath the crown. A half-burned photograph on a nightstand might speak of love that existed long before the war. The show never lingers on them, but they whisper their stories all the same. When you start noticing these things, the entire world of Ooo begins to feel different. It's no longer just a playground for adventures. It's a landscape haunted by memory. Every bright and silly thing exists beside the ghost of something lost. And that balance is part of what makes Adventure Time so strangely comforting. It acknowledges decay without fear. It lets the past rest without erasing it. Even the heroes, whether they know it or not, are surrounded by history at every step. When Finn picks up a sword from a dusty cave, when Marceline strums a tune beside a pile of broken instruments, when Princess Bubblegum brews a potion in a beaker that might once have been human-made, they are all, in their own way, communing with ghosts. The objects of Ooo are not forgotten. They are transformed. They are memory turned into myth. And somewhere in that quiet transformation lies the gentle truth of the world that even after everything ends, pieces of beauty always remain. A coin half buried in dirt. A trinket left behind. A child's toy floating in the lake of a world reborn. The treasures in the background remind us that stories never really vanish. They just fade into the scenery, waiting for another dreamer to notice them again. If you look closely during some of the quieter episodes, the ones where the story slows down and the camera lingers just a moment too long, you'll notice that the world itself seems to remember. A chipped coffee cup in the corner of a ruined cabin, a pair of cracked spectacles on a windowsill catching the afternoon light. None of these things are ever spoken of, yet they carry a warmth, a sense that someone once lived and dreamed there. Take the ruins near the outskirts of the Candy Kingdom, for example. Scattered among the overgrown vines and pink brickwork are bits of a civilization that doesn't quite fit the candy aesthetic: bits of metal, scraps of circuitry, broken glass. These are echoes of the human age, buried beneath centuries of sugar and laughter. If you pause on the right frame, you might spot a tattered flag hanging in the background, faded, indistinguishable, but distinctly not from the world we know now. Perhaps it once marked a refuge or a bunker, or simply a home. The show never tells us. It only shows, and that restraint makes the discovery all the more powerful. There's a certain tenderness in how Adventure Time handles these artifacts. They aren't treated as relics of despair, but as remnants of life. The artists and writers place them not as warnings, but as whispers, reminders that the world of Ooo didn't begin when the show did. It's been spinning for ages, collecting stories like dust. Even the silliest places, like the Breakfast Kingdom or the Fire Kingdom, hold their own ancient oddities, a charred mural in a hallway, an old radio built into the wall, an ancient staircase that leads nowhere. One particular moment comes to mind when Finn and Jake wander into the ruins of a library deep beneath the surface. The shelves are crooked, the books half turned to dust, yet the titles are legible, just for second words written in human languages that no longer exist. The books speak of technology, poetry, and longing. They were written by people who probably didn't survive the Mushroom War, but the pages somehow did. That quiet endurance feels deeply comforting. Even when the world ended, stories found a way to remain. And then there are the stranger treasures, objects that feel almost too deliberate, too purposeful, to be mere decoration. In the background of one episode, a faded map appears on a wall behind Princess Bubblegum. If you brighten the image, you can see what looks like outlines of continents, not the bubbly, colorful lands of Ooo, but the broken pieces of our own Earth. It's as if someone long ago tried to redraw a world that no longer existed. Perhaps Bubblegum kept it as a curiosity or as a study in what came before. Perhaps she just liked the mystery. Either way, it's there, quietly reminding us that Ooo is not a fantasy realm, it's a future. One born from ashes, rebuilt in sweetness and strangeness. Another favorite hidden treasure appears in Marceline's home. On her walls hang photographs, scraps of posters, and scribbles that tell stories we only glimpse in passing. A small picture of her and her mother. A record sleeve from a forgotten band. A tiny toy, perhaps. Something she kept from the human world before it all changed. Marceline's home feels like a museum of emotion, each item a memory made solid. The show rarely zooms in on these things, yet they give her world a deep sense of continuity, a reminder that time for her is a river with many bends. Even in the most whimsical corners of Ooo, this pattern continues. The treehouse itself, Finn and Jake's home, is a treasure chest disguised as a home. Beneath its cheerful warmth lies a foundation of reclaimed remnants, old furniture, patched together technology, and strange artifacts scavenged from their adventures. Every shelf is lined with keepsakes, helmets, jewels, swords, gadgets. Some they remember, others they've probably forgotten. But each one marks a moment in their lives, preserved quietly in the background. And maybe that's the secret beauty of these hidden treasures. They mirror our own rooms, our own lives, the way we keep trinkets from our pasts, a shell from a beach trip, a photo with a faded corner, a key whose lock we no longer remember. Just like us, the world of Ooo collects pieces of itself. Every item, no matter how small, becomes part of its living memory. When we think about Ooo this way, it feels less like a cartoon world and more like a living dream one, where every object breathes with meaning. The animators could have left the backgrounds empty, but instead, they filled them with life, with quiet details that invite us to pause, to wonder, to feel. That's what makes the experience of watching Adventure Time so hypnotic even in the stillness. Something is always whispering. Sometimes I like to imagine that these hidden objects talk to each other when no one's around, that when the camera fades and the heroes leave the room, the old artifacts hum softly in the dark. The crown, the books, the photos, the cups, all remembering together. The past never really dies in Ooo. It simply changes shape, becoming scenery, becoming myth, becoming the quiet heartbeat beneath the surface of every frame. If you let your gaze wander through the landscapes of Ooo, not toward the characters or the action, but toward the edges of the frame, you start to feel something strange and beautiful, a kind of familiarity. The ruins, the objects, the half-buried machines, they feel almost human. Not just in design, but in emotion. There's longing in those quiet things, a sense that they were made with care, used with purpose, and then left behind when the world forgot how to need them. That feeling comes alive most vividly in the episodes, set far from the main kingdoms in the quiet places. Out in the desert, where sand swallows cities whole, you might see the outline of a rusted tower, bent and brittle. Its surface is covered in vines, its door long gone, but near its base lies a child's drawing. Faded by the sun, it shows a stick-figure family standing beside something that looks suspiciously like a rocket. Was it drawn before the Mushroom War, by a child dreaming of escape, or after, by someone who survived and remembered too much? The show never tells us, but the image stays in your mind, gentle and sorrowful, like a half-remembered lullaby. Another subtle treasure can be found deep in the Ice Kingdom, among the frozen pillars and jagged walls where Simon once wandered alone. There are glimpses of objects sealed beneath the ice, a stuffed bear, a cracked globe, even what looks like a guitar neck. They're preserved like insects in amber, untouched for centuries. You might pass by them without noticing, but when you do, they change how you see the Ice King. His madness, his loneliness, all seem heavier when you realize he's literally surrounded by the ghosts of his past objects from the world he lost. They're not random. They're reminders quietly encased in frost, waiting for a mind that no longer remembers to notice them again. And then there's the little detail many fans miss in the Candy Kingdom. Near the edge of a street, beneath layers of frosting and candy bricks, lies a manhole cover, round, rusted, unmistakably metal. A relic of plumbing, of industry, of the time before sugar replaced steel. No one in the kingdom uses it anymore, but it remains there, part of the city's bones. Sometimes when the wind passes through the alleyways, you can almost imagine a faint hum from below, as if the old world is still breathing under all that candy and color. It's details like these that make Ooo feel alive in a way few fictional worlds do. The past doesn't vanish here, it lingers. It hums underfoot. It peers through cracks and candy walls and glimmers and puddles after the rain. The artist could have drawn a world that was purely whimsical, untouched by sorrow, but instead they gave us one layered with memory. And memory, in its quiet way, makes everything more real. You can even see it in the way nature has reclaimed the old world. Trees grow through the frames of cars. Rivers run through the bones of skyscrapers. Moss blankets the remains of what used to be electricity towers, turning the harsh edges of metal into something soft and green. It's as though Ooo itself decided not to erase the past, but to cradle it, to turn what was once broken into something gentle again. And maybe that's the real treasure in the background. Not the artifacts themselves, but what they represent. They are proof that the end of the world isn't truly the end, that beauty can be born from ruin. The people who lived before might be gone, but the things they left behind still shimmer with meaning. They've become part of the next story, relics transformed into roots, reminders that life always finds a way to start again. It's easy to forget that Ooo was once our world. Beneath its magic and absurdity lies a quiet sadness, a reminder of what was lost. But Adventure Time never lingers on that sadness too long. It lets it rest beneath the surface like the hum of a dream you can't quite remember. The treasures in the background are not there to make us mourn, but to remind us that creation never stops. The universe keeps building upon itself, layering joy and sorrow, past and present, until they blur into something beautiful. So when you next watch an episode, try letting your eyes drift away from the characters for a moment. Look at the corners, the shelves, the cracks in the walls. There you'll find the heartbeat of Ooo, the quiet evidence that even in a world made of candy, the echo of humanity endures. The lost civilization isn't truly gone. It's sleeping in plain sight. And through the small treasures it left behind, it still speaks softly to those willing to listen. And maybe that's what the show invites us to do, to notice, to slow down, to see the forgotten, to find wonder not just in adventure, but in stillness. Because sometimes the most meaningful stories aren't the ones being told. They're the ones waiting silently in the background, patient as the night, glowing faintly in the corners of a dream. Every artifact in the background of Ooo carries a kind of pulse, faint, but steady. It's the rhythm of memory itself, quietly reminding us that even the smallest things can hold whole worlds within them. In the stillness between adventures, the world breathes through these forgotten objects. A radio buried in the mud hums softly when the moonlight touches it just right. A torn flag flutters against a tree, whispering words no one remembers. A cracked mirror catches the sunrise and reflects a world long gone. If you let yourself imagine it, you can almost feel that these things choose to remain. They could have been erased by time or devoured by magic, yet they endure as though Ooo itself knows it needs them. The new world is colorful and strange, yes, but it's the shadow of the old that gives it shape. Without the remnants of humanity scattered through its lands, the brightness of Ooo might feel hollow. Instead, there's always depth, a sense of lives once lived, loves once shared, moments once held dear. In some episodes, the animators give us small gifts, little glimpses that reward the patient viewer. The wreckage of a satellite half buried in the mountains, a skeleton sitting quietly at a piano, a street sign jutting out of the ground in the middle of nowhere, its letters worn smooth by centuries of wind. None of these details are ever explained, but they give the sense that we're walking through the ruins of something sacred. It's as though the land remembers humanity with a kind of bittersweet fondness. Even the Candy Kingdom, with all its sweetness and charm, holds onto echoes of the old world. In the depths of its labs and tunnels, beneath the bright frosting and laughter, lie foundations made of stone and steel. Princess Bubblegum built her empire atop the ruins of what once was science layered upon decay, progress rising from the bones of memory. The walls may be sugar-coated now, but beneath them lies the structure of the forgotten. She never denies it. She simply builds over it, transforming what's left into something that can sustain life again. And maybe that's the message these treasures whisper. The world doesn't erase itself when it changes. It evolves, layer upon layer, each age leaving behind its relics for the next to discover. In that way, Adventure Time isn't just a story about heroes and kingdoms. It's a story about memory itself, about how every world, every person, every moment leaves traces that ripple forward, shaping what comes next. Think about Marceline again, sitting in her room surrounded by objects she's carried for hundreds of years. To her, each one is a song, a story, a reminder. But she's not the only one living that way. All of Ooo is doing the same. The planet has become one vast memory filled with objects that tell its story even when no one's listening. And in a way, that makes Ooo feel more alive than any other world. It's not static. It's dreaming. There's a subtle beauty in the idea that no treasure in Ooo truly belongs to anyone. They're shared memories, drifting between generations and beings. What was once a child's toy becomes a relic in a monster's cave. What was once a scientist's tool becomes a trinket in a hero's bag. Objects pass from hand to hand, life to life, carrying a little piece of everyone who ever touched them. The world becomes a tapestry, stitched together by these exchanges, a record of love, loss, curiosity, and care. Even the silliest artifacts, a banana peel fossilized in crystal, or a rubber duck floating down a lava stream, have their place in that great story. They remind us that not everything meaningful must be grand. Sometimes the smallest, strangest things become anchors for memory. In the heart of Ooo, the world is teaching us to see beauty in what's overlooked, to cherish what endures. As night falls across the kingdoms, the treasures of Ooo rest in silence once more. The crown sleeps beneath ice. The dark cabinet hums behind a peppermint door, and scattered through forests and ruins, the forgotten relics gleam faintly into the moonlight. They wait patiently, content in their quiet purpose to remind the world that even after destruction, wonder can grow again. And as we, the dreamers, peer into that world from our glowing screens, we too become part of that memory. We notice what others miss. We connect the threads, listen to the whispers, and add our own reflections to the story. The treasures of Ooo are not just objects in a cartoon. They are mirrors showing us how all things, even broken and forgotten ones, can still shine in the light of remembrance. So, as the stars stretch above the soft horizon of that faraway world, imagine those little relics glowing softly in the night. Quiet, steady, eternal. Pieces of history turned into lullabies. The background of Ooo is not empty. It's alive, singing gently for anyone who dares to listen. And maybe in some small way, that song is still echoing in our world too, carried by every object we've ever loved, every keepsake we've ever saved. Because stories, like treasures, never really end. They just wait to be found again, waiting patiently in the background of our lives, glimmering softly like forgotten stars. The Enchiridion has always carried an aura of myth around it. Even before Finn first held it in his hands, the book already felt alive, like it had been waiting for him, watching from the edges of the world for someone worthy to open its pages. It wasn't just a manual or a spell book. It was something deeper, something older than even Ooo itself. Every golden page seemed to shimmer with a light not quite from this world, as if the ink had been mixed with starlight and ancient memory. When we first see it, the Enchiridion feels like a gift, a reward for bravery, for heroism, for doing the right thing. But the truth of it, as the show gently reveals, is far more complicated. The book isn't just a guide for heroes. It's a map of the multiverse, a key to the structure of existence itself. Its wisdom stretches beyond kingdoms, beyond time, and even beyond reality. It was created to teach, to test, and perhaps to guard. The origins of the Enchiridion are shrouded in myth. Some say it was written by an ancient hero long before the Mushroom War, a protector of humanity who foresaw the fall and left behind this book to guide future generations. Others whisper that it was a gift from cosmic beings, perhaps the same entities that shaped Ooo after the apocalypse. The cosmic owl, Prismo, the embodiment of chaos, all might have had a hand in its creation. Whatever the truth, one thing feels certain. The Enchiridion doesn't just belong to Ooo. It belongs to the pattern that Ooo is part of the great repeating song of universes rising and falling. Finn's journey with the Enchiridion mirrors that truth. At first he treats it like a treasure, a tool to make him a better hero. But as he grows, the book becomes something else, a mirror of his own soul. When he opens it, he's not just reading words. He's looking at the reflection of what it means to be good, to be brave, to be human in a world that no longer has humans. It's as though the book itself is alive, changing with him, revealing only what he's ready to understand. And then there's the strange, almost sacred way the Enchiridion connects to the cosmos. Its pages are filled not just with words, but with energy. It hums faintly when open, as if it resonates with the very fabric of reality. In one episode, we see that it can act as a portal, a key that unlocks access to higher planes of existence. To the unworthy, it's just a book. But to those attuned to its power, it's a doorway. That duality, the mundane and the divine, runs through so much of Adventure Time, ordinary things becoming vessels of extraordinary truth. What makes the Enchiridion so captivating is that it doesn't shout its importance. Like the other relics of Ooo, it whispers. It doesn't promise answers, it invites questions. What does it mean to be a hero when the world itself is a dream? What is good when good and evil have both become shades of survival? The book doesn't judge, it observes, recording every truth and every lie with the same calm detachment as the stars. If you look closely, you can see how its influence ripples quietly through the show, even when it's not present. The choices Finn makes, the lessons he learns, the courage he finds, all seem touched by the spirit of the Enchiridion. It's as though once you open the book, it never quite closes. Its knowledge seeps into you, becomes part of you, shaping the way you see the world. And maybe that's what real wisdom is, not something you hold, but something that holds you. The design of the Enchiridion itself tells a story, too. Its cover, embossed with gold symbols and marked by an all-seeing eye, reflects its role as both protector and witness. The clasp that keeps it shut looks like a lock, yet the truth is, it only opens to those who already carry the key inside them, the purity of intent, the heart of a hero. The pages are ancient but unblemished, as if the book renews itself each time it's found. That's the quiet magic of it, eternal, uncorrupted by time, patiently waiting for the next dreamer who dares to open its cover. And when Finn finally learns the truth of its power, that the Enchiridion is a tool not just for adventure, but for understanding the universe itself, we see the same pattern that defines all of Oo's relics. Every object, no matter how small or grand, contains the memory of creation. The Enchiridion is that truth made visible, a reminder that knowledge, in its purest form, is both beautiful and dangerous. It gives meaning, but it also demands humility. It reveals, but it also conceals, protecting what cannot yet be known. The book doesn't belong to heroes alone. It belongs to the cosmos, to anyone brave enough to seek understanding and gentle enough to accept mystery. As Finn's adventures deepen, the Enchiridion begins to feel less like a reward and more like a test, as though it were watching, weighing his heart as he journeys through triumphs and heartbreaks. The longer it stays with him, the more it seems to change shape, not physically, but spiritually. Each time he returns to it, the light around it feels different, softer, sadder, or sometimes more alive, as if the book senses the shifting tides of his soul. That's what makes the Enchiridion such a haunting relic. It doesn't exist in the way most objects do. It's as though the book is both present and not, always halfway between the material and the divine. In a world built on strange magic and broken science, the Enchiridion feels like a perfect bridge, a relic that remembers when humanity's understanding of power wasn't born from machines or explosions, but from wisdom and wonder. And yet, it's impossible to speak of the Enchiridion without mentioning how it was used. In the wrong hands, its power was twisted into something frightening. When the Lich manipulated its energy, the book became a tool of cosmic destruction, opening portals that tore the fabric between worlds. In that moment, his dual nature became clear. The same knowledge that could elevate someone to enlightenment could also destroy everything. It's as though the Enchiridion tests not only one's courage, but one's restraint. The Lich's touch corrupted it, turning the pure geometry of its light into something cold and green, something that pulsed with entropy. It's chilling to think that the same artifact that once offered guidance to a kind-hearted boy could also act as a doorway for annihilation. But perhaps that was always part of its design. The Enchiridion doesn't define good or evil, it simply amplifies. It magnifies what already exists in the soul of the one who wields it. That reflection continues through Finn's arc, too. His early use of the Enchiridion was innocent, the curiosity of a child discovering how big and strange the world truly is. But later, when he learns of its connection to multiversal truths, to Prismo and the Time Room, to the alternate timelines, he begins to understand what real power costs. It's not about knowing everything. It's about carrying the burden of what you can't know. The book becomes a mirror of the universe's quiet complexity, infinite, but still tender in its mystery. And within that mystery lies something deeply human. Imagine holding a book that contains everything, the past, the future, every possible version of yourself. Most would crumble under the weight of such knowledge. Yet Finn, with his pure heart, simply keeps going. He reads only what he must, never taking more than he's ready to hold. That balance, that instinct to let go of understanding before it becomes corruption, that's what keeps him grounded, and perhaps why the Enchiridion chose him at all. But what happens to such a relic after its great moments are done? After its pages are burned, rewritten, and sealed away once more? It's comforting to imagine that it still exists somewhere not destroyed, just resting. Maybe it lies deep beneath the ruins of a forgotten kingdom, its cover dimly glowing under layers of dust. Or maybe it exists now as pure thought, a fragment of wisdom drifting through the ether, waiting for another soul in another age to find it again. There's a quiet poetry in that. Artifacts like the Enchiridion never truly end, they only sleep. Just like the world of Ooo, they persist in echoes, in stories, in dreams. The idea of the book, its lessons and its calm wisdom, continue through Finn and Jake's friendship, through the people they inspire, through the tiny acts of kindness that ripple across time. In a way, every hero dreams of doing good, carries a piece of the Enchiridion within them. Its influence even lingers in the physical world of Ooo, in the symbols carved into ancient stones, in the strange geometric designs etched into old temples. You can see the Enchiridion's mark in the way the world organizes itself, how chaos and order dance together in perfect harmony. Every rune, every mysterious pattern in the background of Adventure Time's landscapes feels like an echo of its golden pages. And maybe that's what the creators of the book intended, not a manual for battle, but a living reminder of connection. The Enchiridion teaches that all things, great and small, are part of the same song. The leaf that falls, the mountain that rises, the laughter of a child all exist in the same rhythm. The true hero, then, is not one who fights or conquers, but one who listens to the hum of the world, to the whispers of forgotten truths. That's why the book always feels alive, because in some quiet way it is. Every word, every symbol, every line of glowing text feels like a heartbeat, slow and steady, echoing through eternity. The Enchiridion isn't meant to be read once. It's meant to be felt forever. There's something so moving about the way the Enchiridion bridges the mystical and the mundane, as though it understands that the truest forms of power are the quiet ones. When you watch Finn open its pages, there's no dramatic burst of light or thunderous music. Just a gentle glow, like dawn creeping over a sleeping landscape. It's as if the book respects silence, as if knowledge itself prefers to arrive softly. And that's what makes it so beautifully paradoxical. The Enchiridion holds the potential for unimaginable power portals, reality shifts, cosmic revelations, yet it carries itself with grace, never demanding attention. Its lessons come like dreams, subtle, reflective, lingering long after the moment has passed. That quality mirrors Adventure Time itself, a story that never shouts its meaning, but lets you discover it at your own pace, in your own time. Some theories suggest that the Enchiridion might be more than just a book. Some believe it's a living archive, a vessel, that records the moral and spiritual evolution of Ooo itself. If you imagine the world as a vast, breathing organism, the Enchiridion might be its memory, a place where every act of courage, kindness, and understanding is quietly written. In that sense, it's not just a guide for heroes, but a reflection of them. Each new reader adds their own chapter, whether they mean to or not. This idea becomes even more intriguing when you consider how the Enchiridion reappears in distant lands and beyond. Its influence, though no longer central, still hums faintly beneath the world. Peppermint Butler's dark studies, Simon's search for purpose, even Princess Bubblegum's experiments with knowledge and control, all these storylines, trace their roots back to the Enchiridion's core message, that wisdom without compassion becomes chaos, and curiosity without humility becomes destruction. The book stands as a silent warning wrapped in gold. It's fascinating, too, how the Enchiridion seems to exist on multiple levels of meaning. On one hand, it's a literal artifact, a tangible object that changes hands, opens portals, and causes real events to unfold. But on another level, it feels almost symbolic, as though the entire show's philosophy is bound within its cover. The pursuit of heroism, the acceptance of impermanence, the beauty of choosing love over power, all of these ideas ripple through its presence. There's a small, almost hidden beauty in one of the show's details, the Enchiridion's emblem. The golden eye etched into its cover feels like the universe watching itself. It's not menacing, but knowing, like the calm gaze of an ancient being who's seen the rise and fall of countless worlds. Perhaps the eye doesn't look at you, but through you, measuring how ready you are to understand. It's the same energy you find in the cosmic owl's dreams or in Prismo's timeless smile. The idea that the universe isn't cruel or kind, it simply is, waiting for us to learn how to listen. In that light, the Enchiridion feels less like a book of rules and more like a conversation between the cosmos and whoever dares to open it. Every word becomes a whisper from the stars, reminding the reader of something they already knew deep down. It's not about discovering something new, but remembering something ancient. That's why it fits so naturally in Ooo, a world built on the bones of the old and the bloom of the new, where forgotten wisdom waits beneath every layer of candy, crystal, or snow. And isn't that, in a way, what every relic in this world represents? A piece of memory disguised as an object. The Enchiridion, more than any other, understands this truth. It doesn't demand to be worshipped or feared. It just waits, patient, eternal, knowing that someday someone will open it again. Maybe not to save the world, but simply to understand it a little better. The show never tells us what happens to it in the end. We don't see it resting on a shelf or burning to ash. Its story drifts into silence, like a song fading out at the edge of sleep. But that feels right, doesn't it? A relic like that doesn't need an ending. It was never meant to be found or lost, only remembered. So when you think of the Enchiridion, try not to picture it as a dusty tome locked away somewhere in Ooo. Instead, imagine it as a quiet hum beneath all things, in the gentle rhythm of Finn's footsteps, in the hush between raindrops falling on the Candy Kingdom, in the stillness of the night sky, when the stars seem just a little too bright to be ordinary. That's where the book truly lives, not in ink or paper, but in the steady heartbeat of the world itself. And maybe in some small, dreamlike way, it continues to write even now, not in words, but in moments, every act of kindness, every small adventure, every time someone chooses hope over despair. That's the real Enchiridion, the living story of how love endures even after everything else has fallen away. When you really think about it, the Enchiridion feels less like a book of spells and more like a dream one that Ooo itself keeps having. Every time it's found, it feels like the world is remembering a lesson it once knew long ago. Every time it's lost, the world drifts a little, testing how much it has truly learned. That rhythm of remembering and forgetting, of discovery and loss, seems to echo across the ages of adventure time. Because at its core, the Enchiridion is not a manual for power. It's a meditation on what it means to seek. Every hero who touches it is changed not because of what they gain, but because of what they're willing to give up, their certainty, their control, their belief that they already understand how the world works. The book humbles them. It reminds them that even in a land of magic and wonder, true strength comes not from knowing, but from listening. There's something deeply gentle about that lesson. It suggests that knowledge isn't a weapon to be wielded, but a flame to be tended. Too much of it burns, too little, and the darkness returns. But when held with care, when balanced between curiosity and kindness, it illuminates without consuming. That's the light of the Enchiridion, not a beam that blinds, but a glow that guides. Some fans have speculated that the Enchiridion was never truly written by anyone at all, that it's a manifestation of Oo's collective spirit, born from the hopes and fears of all who came before, a living embodiment of the world's longing for balance. If that's true, then it means the book isn't just ancient, it's eternal. It exists as long as there are people to wonder, to question, to believe. And perhaps that's why it found its way into Finn's hands, not because he was the chosen one, but because he was curious enough to ask why. That curiosity, that childlike hunger to understand, is what keeps Ooo alive. Every relic, every mystery, every strange corner of the land feels like a fragment of that same longing. The Enchiridion simply holds them all together, a quiet centerpiece of a puzzle that never really ends. And when you think about the way it ties into the multiverse, the doorways, the alternate versions of reality, the countless branches of existence, it becomes even more poetic. The Enchiridion is like a constant, a fixed point amid the ever-shifting chaos of time. No matter how many worlds bloom and fade, its purpose remains, to offer a glimpse of understanding to those who dare to look. But only a glimpse, never the full picture, because to know everything is to end the mystery, and the mystery, as Adventure Time teaches us, is what makes life so endlessly beautiful. I like to imagine that somewhere beyond the sight of mortals, the Enchiridion still glows faintly in the hands of another wanderer. Maybe a new hero in a distant world, tracing the golden patterns on its cover with tired fingers, feeling the same quiet wonder that Finn once did. Maybe it's resting beside a campfire in some forgotten realm, the light from its pages mingling with the stars above. Or perhaps it's sleeping deep within the heart of Ooo itself, its power folded neatly into the world's heartbeat, waiting for the next dreamer to find it. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear it, a faint sound, softer than wind through grass, the rustle of unseen pages turning, the hum of wisdom that's older than time. It's as though the book is whispering still, not in words, but in feeling, reminding anyone who can sense it that everything, every story, every friendship, every loss is part of the same great pattern, the same song that has been playing since the first dawn of creation. In that way, the Enchiridion becomes more than a relic. It becomes a promise that even when things fall apart, when worlds crumble, when memories fade, when love feels distant, there is still meaning, still something watching, recording, caring. The universe is not silent. It's simply waiting for us to listen again. And perhaps that's the real magic of the Enchiridion. Not the spells or the portals or the power it holds, but the stillness it invites. The sense that in the vast, chaotic ocean of existence, there is a calm center, a quiet page turning somewhere beyond reach, reminding us that every ending is just another chapter, and that the story, our story, never truly stops being written. So when Finn closes the book for the last time, and the golden light fades from his hands, it doesn't feel like loss. It feels like peace. The Enchiridion doesn't need to stay with him because it already lives within him, in his courage, in his kindness, in his understanding that being a hero isn't about glory or power, but about love, the kind that asks for nothing in return. That's the echo of power the Enchiridion leaves behind. Not a legacy of might, but of quiet understanding. A light that flickers softly, endlessly, across every world it's ever touched. And if you close your eyes right now, you might just feel a trace of it, a golden warmth beneath your heart, reminding you that you too are part of that same infinite story. In the land of Ooo, objects are never just objects. A sword is not only metal. A crown is not only ice. Even a tiny trinket found beneath a pile of rubble can pulse with memory, like a seashell holding the echo of a distant wave. You begin to notice it the more you look, that quiet sentience beneath everything. The feeling that the relics of Ooo are not just sleeping, but dreaming. What if the things we call artifacts are more than remnants of the past? What if they're alive in their own strange, slow way? Not alive as we are not breathing or speaking, but aware like the earth itself is aware of the rain. Each one carrying a faint consciousness, built from every hand that ever touched it, every moment that ever shaped it. The Ice King's crown, the Enchiridion, Peppermint Butler's artifacts, they all share something deeper than enchantment. They remember. They absorb emotion like crystal absorbs light, reflecting fragments of all who came before. The more ancient an artifact is, the more it dreams, and the older its dream, the more it shapes the world around it. If you look closely at Ooo, you can see how those dreams weave through everything. The remnants of old technology pulse like forgotten heartbeats in the ruins. Machines hum without power. Swords reform when broken. Even broken helmets or cracked amulets seem to call softly to the ones who might understand them. It's as though the land itself has fallen into a shared slumber, and each relic is a fragment of that great collective dream. In one of the quieter truths of Adventure Time, Ooo is both a world of survivors and of memories that refuse to fade. After the Mushroom War, magic returned not as a sudden force, but as the residue of human creation machines warped into myths, data turned into spells, emotion reshaping reality itself. That's why the artifacts of Ooo feel so human, even when they're alien. They were born from grief, hope, fear, and wonder, the same ingredients that make dreams. Think about it, the crown that made Simon into the Ice King isn't evil by design. It's a relic with a consciousness formed from protection, from love, from the desperate act of wanting to save someone. Over time, that purpose grew distorted, but the dream remained. The crown's magic never stopped yearning to fulfill its first command: to guard, to preserve, to endure. The same might be true for all the other relics scattered across Ooo. The enchanted objects, the glowing stones, the hidden relics tucked away in tree trunks or buried in the ice, perhaps each carries an echo of intention. Maybe they were once ordinary until someone's emotion, their longing, their sorrow left a mark so deep it became permanent. Even the smaller items, like BMO's components or Marceline's bass guitar, hum with the same living resonance. They're artifacts, too, in a sense, bridges between memory and being. Marceline's bass isn't just an instrument. It's her history made tangible. Every note she plays keeps her memories alive, lets her speak to the ghosts of her own past. It dreams through her just as she dreams through it. And when you think of it that way, and the world of Ooo becomes something astonishing, not just a place filled with magic, but a living archive of emotion. Every object, every fragment, every ruin is dreaming its own version of the world. And sometimes, when the right soul comes along, a hero, a wanderer, a lonely heart, those dreams awaken. They whisper guidance, lend strengths, or open paths that were hidden. It's not about destiny, really. It's about resonance. The way a tuning fork vibrates when it meets another of the same note. The artifact recognizes something in its wielder, a shared dream, a familiar longing, and in that recognition, they become one. Finn and his swords, Marceline and her bass, Simon and his crown, even Bubblegum, and her experiments, each of them found their relics, not by chance, but through connection. That's why so many of these items feel alive, because in a way, they are. They carry consciousness, not in the way minds do, but in the way music does, woven from emotion and memory, passed on and reinterpreted endlessly. The people of Ooo don't control their artifacts. They converse with them, sometimes gently, sometimes painfully, but always truthfully. And as the centuries pass, these relics will continue to dream even when the ones who once held them are long gone. The dreams will drift into the air, into the soil, into the starlit rivers that run beneath the world. The artifacts of Ooo are not just relics of the past. They are the heartbeat of the present and the seed of what's yet to come. When you begin to see Ooo in that way, as a dreaming landscape stitched together by its own memories, even the smallest details start to glow with meaning. A broken shield left behind after a forgotten battle, a cracked gem half buried in the Candy Kingdom soil, a shard of glass reflecting the moonlight near Marceline's cave. Each one hums faintly with life. You can almost sense their thoughts, slow and wordless, like the way trees might think if given eternity to ponder. There's something hauntingly beautiful about the idea that the world itself might be alive, remembering everything that ever happened to it. Perhaps that's why so much of Ooo feels both ancient and new, a patchwork of old dreams awakening in the bodies of strange new creatures. The Lich's lingering essence, the growing intelligence of Goombald's creations, even BMO's childlike curiosity, they all come from that same cycle of remembrance. The line between artifact and being is blurred completely. It's as if, after the Mushroom War, when humanity's age ended, their creations inherited their souls, a sort of quiet reincarnation. Circuits turned into hearts, programs into personalities, weapons into caretakers. The relics dream their makers back into existence, not as humans, but as the strange, beautiful things that now wander the land of Ooo. When you think of it like that, Ooo isn't a wasteland reborn. It's a dream remembering itself after a long, deep sleep. And maybe that's what gives Ooo its uncanny sense of serenity even amid its chaos. Everything has purpose because everything remembers. The mountains remember their own explosions. The rivers remember when they were highways. Even the sky, shimmering with strange lights and constellations, remembers when satellites once orbited above. All of it is part of the same ongoing dream, a dream the artifacts keep alive by simply existing. When Finn walks through this world, he's not just a hero, he's a listener. Each artifact he encounters speaks in its own language. Some hum with danger, others with sorrow, and some with an almost parental affection. The grass sword that fuses with his arm, for instance, doesn't feel like a curse, but like an ancient entity seeking harmony. It reacts to his fear, his bravery, his compassion. It doesn't merely serve him, it learns from him. The artifact evolves, and so does he. This kind of symbiosis appears again and again throughout the series, as if to remind us that every relationship in Ooo between creature and creature, object and person, even dream and dreamer, is built on connection. Magic in this world isn't about control or dominance. It's about resonance, the ability to hear what's already there. That's why Peppermint Butler's dark relics, though dangerous, still vibrate with meaning. He understands their sentience, respects it, even when he bends it to his will. That mutual awareness, however shadowed, is still a kind of conversation. It's almost poetic how this truth mirrors the way Adventure Time itself was created. Each episode, each artifact, each emotional note feels like a fragment of a greater dream, the shared imagination of all who built Ooo together. The writers, the artists, the voices, the viewers. The show itself has become an artifact, now too. It dreams through those who remember it, who return to it in quiet moments. And in that way, we become part of Oo's dream as well. Because dreams never really die, they only change shape. The crown still whispers. The Enchiridion still glows somewhere beyond sight. Peppermint Butler's hidden artifacts still stir faintly beneath the soil. They wait patiently for the next soul who might hear their call, who might awaken them again with touch, with curiosity, with care. The world doesn't forget those who listen. It remembers them as part of its story, part of its pulse. And maybe that's the quiet message beneath all of Oo's relics, that nothing is ever truly lost. The world carries us, just as we carry it. Every creation, every memory, every act of kindness ripples outward, shaping the dreams that come after. The artifacts aren't just dreaming back, they're dreaming with us and through us, keeping the song of Ooo alive, note by glowing note. When we start to think of Ooo this way as a place still dreaming through the things it left behind, it changes how we see everything. The relics aren't simply objects, they are bridges. They connect what was to what is and what might be again. A sword might remember the hand that forged it. A gemstone might recall the face of the one who once wore it. Even a melody, hummed by a wandering bard, can echo long after the singer fades, passing through time like a living heirloom. Take, for instance, the ruins near the ocean's edge, the stone towers half swallowed by coral and barnacles. There are carvings there, weathered almost to nothing, of symbols that look like both circuitry and runes. Some say they're remnants of pre-war human temples, places where technology and mysticism merged. Others believe they are monuments left by entities older than human memory, who shaped energy itself into architecture. But whatever the truth, those towers still hum faintly when the tide rises, as though the sea itself is remembering a ritual it once performed. There's a story told quietly among scavengers of Ooo that if you listen close enough to the hum of an ancient relic, you can sometimes hear the voice of its last owner. Not a ghost exactly, but a kind of emotional echo, the laugh of a long-gone scientist, the prayer of a frightened child, the final breath of a soldier clutching something precious. These fragments of feeling don't haunt Ooo in a cruel way. They linger softly, like candlelight in the corners of time. Even the Candy Kingdom, with all its cheer and color, has its own hidden relics, humming beneath the sweetness. The pipes and tunnels that run below its streets are ancient, lined with pre-war steel beneath layers of peppermint and gumdrop stone. Some of those pipes still lead to chambers sealed long before Princess Bubblegum's rain rooms that contain devices she never built, yet somehow understands. She once described them quietly as old friends she hasn't met yet. It's a poetic phrase, but it also tells us how deeply the people of Ooo feel their world. They know they're living in the shadow of a dream, and they respect the remnants the dream left behind. Artifacts, in that sense, are like memories that refuse to fade. They teach the people of Ooo without words. Think of the Enchiridion again, a book that was once meant to guide heroes, yet evolved into something far greater. It absorbed centuries of wisdom and chaos, becoming not just a manual, but a consciousness of its own. And when it fell into Finn's hands, it didn't simply instruct him, it reflected him. His growth, his pain, his hope. The book became a mirror for what it means to be a hero in a world built on fragments. Maybe that's what all artifacts do. They mirror their finders. The Ice King's crown mirrored his loneliness. Peppermint Butler's relics mirrored his hunger for understanding. Even small things, Marceline's amulet, BMO's camera, Tree Trunks' old music box, they all hold within them the emotional fingerprints of their owners. To hold one of these things is to hold a fragment of their heart. And if you listen closely enough, you can almost feel it beating. There's something deeply comforting about that idea. It means that in Ooo, no one is ever truly forgotten. Even when memories fade, the feeling remains crystallized in the relics, waiting to be rediscovered. Every time someone touches an old object with care, they awaken a little spark of that person's essence. It's not resurrection, not exactly. It's communion. The past speaking softly to the present, reminding it to remember. And maybe that's what gives Ooo its dreamlike sense of continuity. The present is always in conversation with the past. The magic of this world isn't about spells or enchantments. It's about remembrance, a constant act of listening to objects, to nature, to memory itself. Even the stars seem to participate, blinking down on Ooo like eyes that never sleep, keeping watch over the dream. If you've ever had an object that seemed to hum faintly in your hand, an old toy, a book passed down, a necklace found in the sand, maybe you felt a piece of that same energy, a connection between your heartbeat and the memory of someone else's. That's the kind of magic Ooo lives on. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that sighs, gentle, timeless, enduring. Because in the end, maybe the true power of an artifact isn't in what it can do, but in what it reminds us of, the moments we carry, the lives we build upon, the dreams we inherit. The land of Ooo may be filled with strange magic and cosmic chaos, but beneath it all lies a quiet truth. Every relic, no matter how small, dreams of being remembered. And when we let ourselves drift into that idea that the relics of Ooo are still dreaming, we begin to see that the whole world might be a memory breathing in its sleep. Every ruined tower, every cracked gemstone, every dusty trinket in the corner of an old wizard's shop, they're all part of the same long, continuous sigh, a collective memory of everything that ever was, still humming faintly beneath the laughter and the quiet. Imagine walking through the empty plains at dawn when the mists are still hanging low. The sunlight catches on shards of glass half buried in the soil, and each one glows for a moment like it remembers something, a life, a light, a face. Maybe they're just reflections, or maybe those fragments are the world's way of whispering its stories back to itself. The air is full of that gentle conversation. The breeze moving through the grass, the rustle of trees, the soft murmur of distant ruins. Everything is speaking if you listen softly enough. It's easy to think that artifacts only belong to heroes and kings' crowns, grimoires, legendary blades. But Ooo teaches us something different. It tells us that the smallest things can hold the biggest echoes. A button from a soldier's jacket, a candy wrapper preserved in amber sugar. Even a drop of melted ice from Simon's crown could hold the memory of love and sorrow intertwined. These little remnants are the anchors that keep the dream from drifting too far away. And what happens when we forget them? When relics fade, or are lost, or crumble back into dust? I like to think they don't truly disappear. Maybe they simply return to the dreaming. They dissolve into the great unseen current of memory that flows beneath all of Ooo. Perhaps they find their way into the clouds or the stars, or the soft snow that falls over the Ice Kingdom. Maybe that's why the snowflakes there seem to shimmer a little more brightly, as if each one carries the glint of a forgotten story. There's an unspoken tenderness in that psycho-creation, loss, remembrance. Objects come to life, they serve their purpose, and then they rest. The same way people do. The same way entire civilizations do. But even in rest, they continue to be, in their own quiet way. The relics dream, and through them, the world dreams too. It's a comforting thought, isn't it? That nothing in Ooo is ever truly gone, only transformed. Think of Finn, years later, walking past the remnants of an old adventure. Maybe he picks up a broken shard of his old sword. He turns it in his hand, feeling the weight of it. Not just the metal, but the history, the laughter, the fear, the love. He smiles, sets it down again, and moves on. The relic remains, waiting for another wanderer, another listener. The story continues in a new voice. That's the secret of Oo's lost artifacts. They're not just pieces of the past, they're storytellers. They hold their own lullabies, waiting for someone curious enough or gentle enough to hear them. Every object that ever mattered continues to hum softly in the dark, carrying a melody that stretches across ages. It's the music of connection between time, between people, between dreams. So the next time you think about the strange and magical world of Adventure Time, maybe you'll picture it as a landscape of sleeping memories. The crown resting in the cold, still whispering its regrets. The Enchiridion, lying open under starlight, its pages rustling with unseen winds. Peppermint Butler's cabinet glowing faintly in the dark, its contents murmuring secrets too old to name. And scattered everywhere in tree roots, in puddles, in the corners of forgotten castles, the artifacts that dream back, keeping Ooo alive with their endless quiet remembering. Because the truth is, Ooo doesn't just exist in the show or in stories or in drawings. It exists wherever someone closes their eyes and remembers it. Each of us, in our own way, carries a tiny relic of that world, an image, a line of dialogue, a moment that never leaves. That's how stories endure. They pass from hand to hand, heart to heart, until they become something living. And maybe that's what the relics have been trying to tell us all along, that the real magic isn't in crowns or grimoires or crystals, but in the act of remembering, of keeping a piece of the dream alive within ourselves. Because when we remember Ooo, its beauty, its strangeness, its heartbreak, we help it continue to breathe. So wherever you are tonight, as you settle beneath your blanket and let your eyes grow heavy, think of all those little treasures still glowing faintly in the dark corners of the world. The things that remember us even when we forget them. The things that hum in the silence, reminding the world to dream. And with that thought, Let the hum fade into stillness. Let the world of Ooo drift softly away for now, back into its shimmering rest. Good night.